The theater lights dim. Applause lingers like a memory, then thins into hush. On the silver screen she is luminous, a face carved by light, a laugh the cameras loved. Barbara La Marr, born 1896, dead 1926, moved through the 20s as if the world itself had been built to flatter her. She was called beautiful in a way that felt inevitable, a walking headline, the woman whose presence made studios rearrange their schedules. The city called her a star, the cameras called her muse. Yet the image that endures is not only a portrait of glamour. Behind the flashbulbs and the glossy press lies a shorter, colder account, a body that kept going long after it should have been allowed to stop. On a soundstage, with technicians and directors nearby, she collapsed. The story told then was tidy and swift, exhaustion, an artist driven too hard. The facts, however, leave shadows where certainty should stand. Contracts, late-night shoots, whispered demands for one more take, the machinery of fame asking for one more breath.
This opening is not an accusation, but an invitation. It is a light placed at the edge of a deeper dark. It asks a simple, sharp question. Why did a woman, adored by millions, push herself until she could not rise again? Was it hunger for applause? An attempt to outrun a haunted past? An obligation pressed upon her by those who profited from her glow? Or a private desperation no pampered life could soothe? The camera recorded her smile. The ledger recorded her hours. Between the two lies a quieter ledger, one of debts invisible to publicity stills. The story that follows will move through those ledgers. It will trace the small decisions that aggregate into collapse. It will listen for the echoes that film reels and gossip columns try to bury. This opening adheres to the upgraded framework for the Whispers Behind the Curtain project. Before she became Barbara La Marr, she was Retha Watson, a child who learned far too early that the ground beneath her feet could vanish without warning. Her family moved constantly, drifting from town to town across the American West. Her father, accused more than once of being a spy, dragged the family into an atmosphere of fear, secrecy, and instability. For a young girl, this meant no lasting friendships, no familiar streets, no sense of belonging, only the quiet understanding that safety was temporary. She grew up watching adults whisper, watching her mother hide worry behind polite smiles, watching her father's uncertainty shape the rhythm of every day. And somewhere in that shifting landscape, she developed a trait that would later make her a star and destroy her. She learned to survive by performing. Every time the family fled a town, she reinvented herself a little. Brighter, softer, more charming, more unforgettable. A child who believed that if she shone enough, no one would have a reason to leave. By 17, she was already writing poetry, dancing in shows, stepping into the spotlight with an intensity that felt older than she was. But beneath her talent lay the residue of childhood instability. A girl terrified of standing still, terrified of disappointing, terrified of becoming forgettable. It is here, long before Hollywood, that the fuse was lit. Because a child who grows up believing she must constantly prove her worth will grow into a woman who cannot stop working, even when her body begins to break.
When Barbara La Marr arrived in Hollywood, she wasn't just noticed, she was seized by the industry like a rare commodity. Studios had a name for her almost immediately, the girl who is too beautiful for Hollywood, a nickname that sounded flattering until you realized it became her prison. A star sculpted by demand. She had the kind of presence the silent era worshipped, eyes that could tell a story without a single line of dialogue, a face the camera adored. Within months, she was everywhere. Premieres, gossip columns, casting lists.
But behind the glamour was a contract forged in steel. Studios pushed her with a schedule that would break anyone. 5 films in a single year, shooting days that stretched 20 to 22 hours, no rest between projects, promotional events added on top of filming, mandatory media appearances, constant pressure to remain flawless, alluring, marketable. Hollywood didn't just cast her, it consumed her. A life lived under spotlights, never in darkness. Barbara was always on camera, on red carpets, on interviews, on scripts rewritten overnight.
And every time exhaustion clawed at her, studio executives repeated the same refrains. Just one more scene, just one more picture. She's our biggest draw, keep her moving. They praised her professionalism, her stamina, her willingness to push through pain. But admiration slowly turned into exploitation. Behind the curtain, scandals as fuel. Her beauty attracted not only attention, but obsession. Her romances, her divorces, her rumored affairs, every headline fed her image, and the studios capitalized on all of it. The more chaotic her personal life seemed, the more films they rushed her into. Because a star in turmoil sells tickets, and Barbara's turmoil became their marketing. The spiral toward collapse. Working almost without sleep, she started relying on morphine for pain, sleeping pills to force rest, alcohol to ease anxiety. But instead of slowing down, her schedule accelerated. Instead of concern, the studio offered her new roles. She was becoming weaker, thinner, quieter. But Hollywood didn't want her silence. It wanted her image. This was the point of no return, the moment when Barbara La Marr stopped being a person and became a product that couldn't be allowed to stop moving.
The descent wasn't sudden. It was silent, incremental, the kind of slow erosion that only becomes visible when it is already too late. Barbara La Marr's body had been whispering warnings for months. The unseen damage. Her weight began to drop rapidly. Her lungs weakened. She developed a chronic, tearing cough. Her skin grew pale, then translucent under studio lights. Crew members noticed she often stood off camera with her hands trembling. Makeup artists saw the dark hollows forming under her eyes. Assistants whispered that she sometimes fell asleep sitting upright, still wearing her costume. But the cameras kept rolling. The pills that carried her through. Unable to rest, she relied more heavily on morphine to dull the pain, and sedatives to force a few hours of shallow sleep. The cycle was brutal. Pain, to morphine, to exhaustion, to sedatives, to early call time, to makeup chair, to lights, to action. A loop that repeated until her body stopped distinguishing day from night, work from survival. Hollywood's quiet indifference. Studio executives saw what was happening. They knew. But the films were making money, and Barbara La Marr was a name that filled theaters. So instead of relief, they gave her another leading role, another extended schedule. The machine was not built to slow down for a single woman, even one who was dying inside it. The moment the world didn't see. During the filming of The Girl from Montmartre, her condition collapsed. She swayed between takes, unable to stand without assistance. Her breath came in shallow gasps. Crew members urged her to rest, but she insisted, "I have to work. They need me."
Then, under the hot lights, surrounded by cameras and cables, Barbara La Marr finally fell. The glamorous icon Hollywood crafted lay unconscious on the cold studio floor. This was the moment the myth cracked, the moment her body, pushed far beyond its limits, simply shut down. But the tragedy wasn't just her collapse. It was why she refused to stop, even when she was dying. And the answer to that lies in the secret Hollywood tried to bury.
The public saw a glamorous star collapsing from exhaustion. Hollywood saw a profitable asset finally breaking. But behind both versions of the story was a truth Barbara La Marr carried alone. A truth that explains why she refused to stop working even as her body failed. The child she couldn't admit was hers. In 1923, Barbara quietly adopted a baby boy. The newspapers praised her kindness. Studios promoted it as an act of charity, a beautiful star rescuing an orphan. But the truth was far more fragile, far more dangerous. The child was her own biological son. Hollywood, terrified of scandal, demanded silence. A single mother in the 1920s, especially a famous one with a reputation for wild romances, risked career-ending backlash. Studios warned her, if the public learns this is your child, your image is over. So, Barbara played along with the lie. She became the adoptive mother of her own baby. A mother in the shadows. She worked herself to exhaustion because she believed she had no choice.
She needed money to raise him safely. She needed fame to shield him from scandal. She needed to keep studios satisfied so they wouldn't expose her secret. Every film she accepted, every long night she pushed through, every step toward collapse was for the child she couldn't openly claim. The weight of a hidden life. Imagine the pressure. A dying body, a crushing work schedule, a private heartbreak, and a fear that if she stopped, even for a moment, Hollywood would turn her secret into a weapon. This is the twist of her story. Not a plot twist manufactured for drama, but a human one. Barbara La Marr didn't work until she collapsed because she loved fame. She did it because she loved her son. The final cruelty. When she was hospitalized, weak and barely conscious, she begged nurses for updates about her boy. But Hollywood intervened again. They kept her son away until the very end, still committed to maintaining the lie, even as she was dying. When Barbara La Marr died in 1926 at only 29, Hollywood crafted its final narrative for her. She worked too hard. A simple sentence, clean, convenient. A ribbon tied neatly around a life that had been anything but. But the truth, like all truths in old Hollywood, lived in the shadows behind the official story. A star extinguished, not forgotten. Her funeral drew thousands. Crowds spilled into the streets, pushing past one another just to glimpse her coffin. A last attempt to be close to a woman they had only ever known in flickering images. The studios sent flowers. Directors issued statements. Columnists wept into their typewriters. Yet none of them acknowledged the machine that had driven her past the edge. None admitted that they had seen her cracks, her trembling hands, her silent suffering. None spoke of the nights she forced herself awake because she was terrified that stopping meant losing everything: her fame, her livelihood, her ability to care for her hidden son. A quiet legacy. His boy, whom she had fought so hard to protect, would grow up to learn the truth, that her mother had died trying to give him a life she herself never had. A stable one, free from scandal, built on love rather than survival. His name was changed later, his identity shielded, but her sacrifice lived on in him. The question that lingers, Barbara La Marr's story, is not just the tale of a star who burned too brightly. It is the story of what happens when an industry values a woman's image more than her life, when beauty becomes currency, and currency becomes a cage. Her final collapse on the studio floor was not a dramatic scene, it was a verdict. Hollywood took everything she could give, her youth, her health, her time, her sleep, her secrets, and when she could give no more, the spotlight simply moved on. But in the dim corners of film history, her story still whispers. How many stars have we adored on screen while never noticing the price they paid in the dark?